So in order to further please Ibn Ziyad, after the killing of Imam al-Husain and his companions, he orders that the bodies be decapitated, all the heads be removed and carried on spears, and then horses to trample the bodies in order to satisfy Ibn Ziyad.
Umar ibn Sa'ad sent the head of Al-Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam to go ahead of them with Khawli and Hamid ibn Muslim to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, and then he took the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih to Kufa.
When they entered Kufa, people thought they were Khawarij. Historians say that the people of Kufa were celebrating, they were dancing.
But she realized that these people were ignorant, that they did not recognize who they were. So she was forced to give a speech.
O people of Kufa, you are a people of basically, you're traitors. You invited us to support us, and then you turned against us, killing us, and now you're coming and weeping for what happened to us?
It was then that people began to realize that this is the family of Rasulullah. They're not Khawarij, they're not outcasts.
فلا رقعت الدمعة. May this tear never dry up. Do you know who you have killed? You have killed a piece of the Prophet's corpse, a piece of the body of the Holy Prophet.
The first role of Zainab Salaamullah alayha here is to inform people exact details. You look at the knowledge of Sayyidah Zainab, you look at the courage of Sayyidah Zainab, you look at the eloquence of Sayyidah Zainab, you look at the analysis of Sayyidah Zainab. Wallah, this is something that Allah had agreed with your grandfather the Prophet, that we face trouble, we face tragedy in order to serve Islam. Wallah, Allah will give power to people on this earth who will build graves over them, who will mark them one by one, who will tell people what they had done, and who will bring a generation of people who year after year will commemorate Al-Husain, and who will make this place a visiting place. Wallah, our story, this event, this tragedy of Karbala will never be forgotten. Do not worry, O my nephew, the story of Al-Husain, the message of Al-Husain will carry.
Having returned from his camp at Nakhla, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad went straight to his mansion. The sacred head was brought to him, and it was then that the walls started bleeding and a fire broke out from one part of the mansion, making its way to the place where Ibn Ziyad was sitting. He fled away from it and entered one of the mansion's rooms. The head spoke out in a loud voice that was heard by Ibn Ziyad as well as those who were present there and then. It said, "Where do you flee to? If fire does not catch you in the life of this world, it shall be your abode in the hereafter." The head did not stop speaking till the fire was out. Everyone at the mansion was stunned. Nothing like this had ever taken place before. Yet Ibn Ziyad was not admonished by an incident such as this, so he ordered the captives to be brought to him. When Sayyidah Zainab and the rest of the caravan, including Imam Zain al-Abidin, entered
the palace of Ibn Ziyad, he was laughing, and he had the head of Imam Hussain in front of him.
And he had a rod in his hands and he was striking the holy head. He was hitting the face and the head of Imam al-Husayn, one of the companions of the Prophet, who was not a supporter of Amir al-Mu'mineen. His name was Zayd ibn Arqam.
Zayd ibn al-Arqam yelled at Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad for beating the head of Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi. He said, lift your hands from the cheeks and the lips of Abi Abdullah al-Husayn. Do you know how many times have I seen Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih? Countless numbers of times I've seen him kissing these lips of Abi Abdullah al-Husayn.
Wallah, what you are doing is wrong. This is the head and the lips that the Holy Prophet used to kiss. And because he was an old man, Ziyad was afraid, and he was a companion, he was afraid to have him killed, so we had him thrown out of the mansion.
When he saw Sayyidah Zainab, he told her, and this is a very well-known incident and story, he told her, كيف رأيتِ صنع الله بك وبأخيك.
Allah be praised that He has defeated your brother, who was a liar and who was a rebel. And Zainab says, this cannot be my brother. Since we are the household of the Prophet, we are the household of truth. And if my brother was a liar, then we would be with falsehood, and that is not us.
My brother's being killed, my son's being killed, my brother was stepped on, his ribs were broken, his head was cut off. This was all beauty. This was all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This all had a greater meaning, and there was a greater objective to all this sacrifice.
Even though Salamullah alayhi, Zainab was trying to keep the eyes of the men away from her, and the daughters of Al-Husayn and the daughters of the Prophet, Ibn Ziyad recognized something about her. He saw that Zainab had all the attention of the family of the Prophet around her.
But he was not expecting a completely different answer from Sayyidah Zainab. He was probably expecting her to burst into tears and act emotionally. But he saw that, no, Sayyidah Zainab had the courage. She was more courageous than certain men.
And he continued to insult the Imam, and Zainab continued to say back to him the truth.
هؤلاء قوم كتب الله عليهم القتال فبرزوا إلى مضاجعهم وسيجمع الله بينك وبينهم. These are a group of men that Allah has destined for them to be martyrs, so they went to their destinies, and one day Allah will collect them along with you, and you will stand in front of Allah, and Allah will be the judge.
She says to him, Yabna Marjana, may your mother lose you, which was an Arab verb for saying, is a way of insulting someone without using ill words. She says, may your mother lose you. Ibn Ziyad was so angry, he wanted to have Zainab Salamullahi alayha killed there and then. And it was only because some of the people in the court, they had heard the effects of the word of Zainab. They said to him, Ibn Ziyad, this is going too far now. You killed all their men yesterday, and you look what you have done with them, and now you want to kill Zainab in this court. And so Ibn Ziyad relented.
He then turned to Ali, son of Al-Husain alayhi salam, whom he asked what his name was. I am Ali, son of Al-Husain, came the answer. Ibn Ziyad asked Ali, did not Allah kill Ali? Al-Sajjad alayhi salam answered, I used to have an older brother, also named Ali, whom your people killed. Ibn Ziyad responded by repeating his statement that it was Allah who had killed him. Al-Sajjad therefore said, Allah takes the souls away at the time of their death. None dies except with Allah's permission. Ibn Ziyad did not appreciate him, thus responding to his statement rather than remaining silent, so he ordered him to be killed. But his aunt, the wise lady Zainab, put her arms around him and said, O Ibn Ziyad, suffices you what you have shed of our blood. Have you really spared anyone other than this? If you want to kill him, kill me with him as well. Al-Sajjad alayhi salam said to Ibn Ziyad, do you not know that we are used to being killed, and that martyrdom is one of Allah's blessings upon us? Ibn Ziyad looked at both of them and said, leave him for her. Amazing is their tie of kinship. She wishes to be killed with him.
Ibn Ziyad stood on the minbar, stood on the pulpit, and he started to give a small speech. Now Ibn Ziyad had a stutter. He had been raised by his mother. His mother was she was not a Muslim, and she was a Persian. So he could not speak Arabic very well, and he had a stutter, so he was struggling to give a speech. And he stood there and he said, Allah has given us victory over the rebel Al-Husain, who was a liar, the son of the liar, whose purpose in life, whose mission in life was to create animosity and create divisions and to attack Amir al-Mu'mineen Yazid ibn Muawiyah. And this speech was given in front of all the good men of Kufa, all the leaders of the tribes, and nobody had dared to respond to Ibn Ziyad, except one elderly man who was blind. His name was Abdullah ibn Afif al-Azdi.
Abdullah ibn Afif al-Azdi got up, and he was a blind man. He yelled at Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, scolded him.
And he said, Ya ibn Marjana, curse be upon you. May Allah's damnation be upon you. You are the liar, the son of the liar. Wallah, it is not Al-Husain. Al-Husain is the grandson of the Prophet. Though these people do not have the courage to stand up to you, there are some of us who will. And so Ibn Ziyad, who could not have his authority challenged in this manner, he cried out to his guards, grab that man. As his guards were coming to take Ibn Afif, he shouted a code word that only the men of his tribe, the Azdi tribe, used. He cried out, Ya Mabrur, which was a code word to use if you were in trouble. And when his tribesmen heard this word, they came out, pushed away the guards of Ibn Ziyad, and took Abdullah ibn Afif out of the mansion and back to his home.
And then he was escorted out of the court of Ubaydullah by his family members, but then the army of Ubaydullah followed him in the house and they killed him. He said, I lost one of my eyes in Jamal and the other one on Siffin, defending Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. And when I lost my eyesight and became blind, I never thought I will become a martyr. But now God accepted my du'as of making me a martyr, and now I will achieve martyrdom. And indeed he did, he was killed.
As Ibn Ziyad had held the Ahlulbayt, the survivors from the Battle of Karbala, in a jail next to the great mosque of Kufa, the days had passed where the bodies of the shuhada were left on the battlefield. Umar ibn Sa'd had buried his men and had shrouded them and prayed over them, and the body of Abi Abdullah and his supporters were left on the battlefield. 3 days, the 10th, the 11th and the 12th passed. Nobody approached the bodies, nobody shrouded them, nobody buried them, nobody protected them from the sun, nobody protected them from the animals and the weather.
According to some of the teachings of the Ahlulbayt, Imam Zain al-Abidin miraculously went to Karbala. That's 3 days after Ashura, by what is generally known as Tayy al-Ard. By miracle, he went to Karbala only.
And he made his way out of the prison of Ibn Ziyad through the graces of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and appeared at that moment, because we have in our narrations and in our belief that only an Imam prays over the body of an Imam. And this applied from Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen to Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, where his young son, Imam al-Hujjah Ajjallahu Faraj al-Sharif, who was only 5 years old at the time, appeared just before his uncle Ja'far would pray over the body. And he said, only an Imam prays over an Imam. We offer the prayer over our fathers.
And then there were a number of people who were from the tribe of Bani Asad.
And on this 13th day, the rest of the Banu Asad started to gather and come round to the place where the battle took place. And they looked at the bodies. Some of them were of their own tribesmen. Some of them were respected men of Kufa. The problem was they could not recognize who was who. These bodies were beheaded. They were headless corpses. They were crushed by hooves and horses. They were beaten by the sun and the weather. They had no way of recognizing who was who. Remember, Imam's body was attacked after his death. His ring, his finger was severed. Some of his garments were stolen. And the same thing happened with the rest of the shuhada. So there was no way to identify who was who.
At that time, Imam Zain al-Abidin said that I know them. And he started describing and telling them what to do.
And so he said to the Banu Asad, help me gather these bodies and move them in a way that befits the way they should be buried. And the Banu Asad assisted. They would carry some of them, their limbs were severed, arms, feet, legs, hand, parts of the torso, and the Imam tried to gather all of these together. And then they reached the body of Abi Abdullah. The Banu Asad came to help the Imam. They said no. The Imam said no. There is someone who will help me with this. And we can only assume the reference here is to the angels that assisted in the burial of Imam al-Husain.
There were three major graves that they dug. One was for the companions. Imam Zain al-Abidin told them that these are the companions. They put them in a special place. And another grave for Habib ibn Mudahir alayhi salam. And the third one was for Imam Hussain and his son Ali al-Akbar.
And then the Imam went out towards the Mashra', towards the stream, and he said, do not come with me, I will bury my uncle Al-Abbas salamullah alayhi without any assistance. I have assistance from someone else, not from you. And again he went and fell to the body of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and kissed him on his neck, and he said, Ya Qamar al-Ashir, O the moon of Banu Hashim. And he cried for a while and then buried Abu al-Fadl by the river, by the stream. And today we see exactly the situation where we have Abu al-Fadl in a shrine maybe a few hundred meters away from Abi Abdullah. Abi Abdullah buried with his two sons, and next to him are the Shuhada. And we see a small distance from him is Habib ibn Mudahir. And we see on the outskirts of Karbala, Al-Hurr ibn Yazid Rayah is buried, because his family members and his mother did not want to see his body trampled. And so they did not permit Umar ibn Sa'd to trample his body, and they removed him from the battlefield and buried him separately.
And of course it's narrated that Abdullah al-Radi', the 6-month son of Imam Hussain who was killed, Imam Zain al-Abidin ordered them to place this small child of Imam Hussain on the chest of Imam Hussain.
And so the Imam ordered for the burial and completed this and prayed over the Shuhada, prayed over the body of his father and the rest of the Shuhada from that day, and returned to his place in Ibn Ziyad's prison.
Ibn Ziyad sent a messenger to Yazid to inform him that Al-Husain alayhi salam and those in his company were killed, that his children were in Kufa, and that he was waiting for his orders as to what to do with them. Yazid ordered him to send them and the severed heads to him. Ibn Ziyad ordered Shimr bin Dil-Jawshan and Amr ibn al-Hajjas, in addition to other men, to head a band of Kufians charged with carrying Al-Husain's severed head, and of those killed with him to Yazid, and mount the heads on spears to display them wherever they went. They were trailed by Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, whose hands were tied to his neck in the company of his family, in a condition the sight of which would cause anyone's skin to shiver.
And Ibn Ziyad, while he awaits to receive a reply, after a few days gets the message that Yazid has said, send me the heads and send me the family of the Prophet to me. And Ibn Ziyad commands his guards and says they are to be led by Shimr ibn al-Jawshan. You are to take these heads with you, display them before all the people, whatever town you go into, display them before the people so that they will know what we have done and they will know how outrageous we can be. And you take these captives to Al-Khalifa Yazid ibn Muawiyah.
In one incident, Sayyidah Zainab saw that the caravan was moving, but the head of the Imam, which was on a spear, the head of the Imam was looking in a certain direction. This was very ambiguous for them. The head of the Imam was in itself a miracle. Historians say that the Imam, his head would speak, it would recite verses.
And so more than one person heard the Imam's head speaking and reciting. Eventually the head was placed in the market, in the bazaar, where the specific part of the bazaar where there were money changers, when people would change dinars into dirhams and so on. And when it was placed there on top of the spears alongside with the rest of Shuhada, Imam's head would recite Surah Al-Kahf.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أم حسبت أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم كانوا من آياتنا عجبا.
Allah saying, and in that, the people of the cave, there was a sign, there was a miracle. And the Imam would stop there and say, but my head reciting is a greater miracle than that.
The army of Umar ibn Sa'ad took the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through Aleppo, and in Aleppo there was a monastery. In the monastery there was a priest or an abbot who was living there. At night they kept the head of al-Imam al-Husain alayhi salam on the spear, and this abbot looked from his monastery towards the head of al-Imam al-Husain alayhi salam and saw a shining bright face. It appeared as if the angels are coming and descending down on this head. So he realized this is something extraordinary. He's never seen something like this before.
So he went to these soldiers, tried to reach this head. They refused. He asked for them, may I approach and see this head? They refused.
Whose head is this? They said this is the head of Al-Husain, the son of Fatima and Ali, the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. He said, really? This is the grandson of your prophet? He said, yes. They said, yes.
So he resorted to bribing them. He offered them some money in order that, so that he may take the head and see exactly what it was.
He took the head. The tradition says he kept it. He cleaned the head of the blood. He perfumed the head of al-Imam al-Husain. And he kept it on a rock as he was cleaning it. And then he hugged the head the whole night, crying.
And he announced his Shahada, he announced his Islam at this great miracle.
I have nothing else to offer you, Ya Aba Abdullah al-Husayn, except to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa anna jaddaka Muhammadan Rasulullah, that I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and that your grandfather Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi is Rasulullah, the messenger of God. And he gave the head back to the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad.
And one of these men who was carrying the head of Al-Husayn was seen some years later hanging onto the curtains of the Kaaba. I have asked you, but I know you will not forgive. So one of these men grabbed him and said, what are you saying? How dare you say to Allah, He will not forgive you? You know He will forgive anything. He said, no, Allah, He will not forgive me, because I was one of those who carried the head of Imam al-Husayn, and I could hear it reciting Quran, and I took a few gold coins in order that someone else can kiss it and can hear the words of the Quran from it, and I did not care. So Allah will truly not forgive me for what I have done. So some of those who were the enemies of Allah knew what they were doing, but their hearts were locked in such a way that they were not going to change the course of their destiny.
When they were near Damascus, Kulthum sent a message to Shimr, asking him to let them enter the city from the least crowded highway, and to take the heads out so the people might be diverted by looking at them rather than looking at the women. He escorted them as they were in a condition from which skins would shiver and senses quiver. Shimr instead ordered his men to take the captives for display before onlookers and to place the severed heads in their midst. On the first day of Safar, they entered Damascus and were stopped at the clock's gate. People came out carrying drums and trumpets in excitement and jubilation.
Sahel ibn Sa'd al-Sa'idi, who was a companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa and he heard his hadith and he heard his sermons, he describes the state. He says, I entered into Sham and I saw the whole city is decorated and people are beating the drums and there are dancers dancing on the streets. I wondered, is there a celebration at this time of the year that people of Sham celebrate and we are not aware of? So he said, I started asking people, what is the matter? And they said, well, God has made the Khalifa Yazid victorious over a group of rebels who attacked him and wanted to cause problems in the Islamic State. And because of this victory, we're celebrating.
And it was a bit similar to the feeling, the sensation that was in Kufa, but maybe multiplied by 20. Because if some of the people of Kufa knew that the caravan that was about to enter were the grandchildren of Rasulullah, in Damascus they had no idea. They had no idea that this was the family of Rasulullah. They were told they were Khawarij, they were enemies of the state. We killed off their men, and these are their women, they're being paraded as a lesson, as a punishment.
because again, Sham, for 2 decades, it hadn't seen the true Islam, or from the beginning, because Muawiyah was the ruler of Sham, and Muawiyah was the #1 enemy of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So they hadn't seen the true Islam. They were brainwashed.
So Sahel was wondering, what's going on? Who are these people? Who wanted to cause a problem in the state? As he was walking, he saw a group of old men weeping, not celebrating. So he asked them, what is the matter? Everyone, the whole city seems to be celebrating, but you guys. And initially they thought he was a spy. So they said, oh, there's nothing, nothing. He then assured them and comforted them by saying, don't worry, I am Sahel ibn Sa'd al-Sa'idi. I am a man who met Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih and heard his hadith. At that stage, the men burst in tears and said, Ya Sahel, it is a strange thing that the skies haven't collapsed on the earth. Haven't you heard that Hussain has been killed in Karbala and his family is being taken as prisoners, and today they'll be arriving in Sham? He said, from what gate will they enter? They said, from a gate known as Babu Sa'a.
The clock's gate, where there was a huge sundial that showed people what time it was. And this was the main entrance to Sham. And they were being brought in, ropes tying each other, Imam Zainab in chains. Whenever they stopped, one of the soldiers would whip them to keep them moving.
So he said, I went to that gate, and indeed from a distance I saw the caravan of Abi Abdullah al-Husain coming, and I saw Imam al-Sajjad bleeding to the extent his shirt became red from the neck and the blood of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. And I saw the heads being carried.
In one story, then an old man, they say that an old man from the people of Damascus with a long white beard, he came and he stood and he started cursing at Imam Zain al-Abidin because he was the only man.
Alhamdulillah that you have been defeated. Allah has granted Al-Amir Yazid power over you. Now, in such a situation, after having suffered such tragedies, most of us would respond in an angry manner. But the Imam, and we'll look at the words of the Imam responds in a way of kindness. And this is the manners of the Ahlulbayt. So that even in such a difficult situation, what is he done to do? He turns towards the Quran.
Imam Zain al-Abidin told him, do you know who we are? He said, no. He said, you're Khawarij. He said, no, we're not Khawarij. He said, then who are you?
Do you know who I am? Have you read the Holy Quran? He said, yes, of course, I'm a Muslim.
Have you come across the verse, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى?
The Imam says, have you read the verse saying, say, I do not ask you for a reward for it, except that you treat my kinsfolk, my family, with kindness. Have you read that verse?
He said, yes. He said, by God, we're the family members of Rasulullah. It is us.
Allah is talking about us. We are the household of the Holy Prophet.
We are the ones who now you are trying to say that the Yazid is defeated and Allah has granted victory. We are the household of purification. Have you heard the verse, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. This is about us.
They say that the old man broke into tears and he kneeled to kiss the hands and the feet of Imam Zain al-Abidin, begging him for forgiveness.
My master, please accept my apologies. We had no idea. Yazid had told us he had defeated a strange and foreign rebels. He did not tell us he had killed the family of the Prophet and made his women captives. We had no knowledge of this. So Yazid now wants the Ahlulbayt to be brought in while he is sitting on his throne, while the head of al-Husain is presented before him, in order that he can make a scene to torment Zainab salamullah alayha, to torment the family of the Holy Prophet.
زمین کربلا دادی شکستم جوانان یک به یک بردی ز دستم زمین کربلا فصل بهار است زخون نوجوانان لاله زار زمین کربلا با حیله بازی عجب کردی و تو مهمان نوازی زمین کربلا با هیله‌بازی عجب کردی و تو مهمان نوازی زمین کربلا با این اراده تو مهمان میکوشی عادت که داده زمین کربلا رنجیدم از تو ز بس کیفی وفایی دیدم از تو زمین کربلا خوش با صفایی